Okay, welcome back to System Foundations. We're going to be going through our Windows commands, our Linux commands, and our Unix commands, which, it's one of those orders. I was going to do Unix, Linux, and then Windows, but I figure we'll start on Windows. So, very first thing you'll notice that in the command prompt, you're here in Documents and Settings Administrator. Now, on the new versions of Windows, it's C:\users administrator, or users, then your username. On this version of Windows, it's C:\documents and settings. On even earlier version of Windows, it would be C:\windows system32 profiles or something like that. So on this one, we're going to go with the Documents and Settings Administrator, and we're going to look at the files. Now, on Linux and Unix, you ls, and you do that to run a listing of the files. And we have the ll command, and that gives us a long listing. In this system, we'll type dir for a directory of the files and folders, and dir/w for a wide listing of those. So you can see dir is about the same as doing an ll, and dir/w gives you the wide listing of directories. Now, if you want to see all the embedded directories, that's dir/s, and that goes through all of these subdirectories, and it just goes through everything that's in the system. Now, there's a command tree that we'll be using in Linux, and the tree command will give you a tree of the system here inside of Windows. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, one little thing here is pwd and cwd in Linux are actual commands. So you'll have the pwd, which is print current working directory inside of Linux. But in Windows, you'll type something like echo %cd %. Look at that. Make sure the E is an echo there. And it should tell you what your directory is right here. So you can see that directory right there. Okay, let's pop on over to Linux. And over on the Linux side, we can do the same things here. We have the ls, which shows us the wide listing, same as directory/w. ll, which gives us the long listing, and it also shows us hidden files. We should have covered that over on Windows. I forgot about hidden files. Over on Windows, you do a directory dir/ah. The A stands for attribute, and the H stands for hidden. If you're ever wondering, I wonder what the directory options are, then you can type dir/? and get some information on the directories. Now, there are, of course, things like help dir, which sometimes works as well. So dir/ like this, or help dir will sometimes work as well. Okay, back over to Linux. So on Linux, we have the ls, gives you the wide listing, ll, which gives you the full listing. Now on our systems, the ll is not going to give you the hidden files. So ours is ls-lh, which is only going to show you the unhidden directories and files. So if you want to see all of the hidden stuff, you do an ls, which means list directory contents, dash long listing format, so you can see user and group, other timestamps. H, human readable size, so it tells you K instead of just giving you 4096. And A for all files. That means show hidden files, like that. And that'll show you all those hidden files. So the same thing as the dir/ah is ls-lha in Unix, in Linux. And over in Unix, we're still actually going through our directories, so I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. All right, so now let's go over, and after we've done that, there is actually, that's all we're doing right there is looking at that directory. Yeah, so let's go ahead and go over to Unix. So over in Unix, we'll do the same thing. ls, you'll notice that's very similar. You got the hidden files showing there, and what you need to make sure is that you don't have an alias anywhere for what is going on that system. Now, ls is showing us hidden files. Dot denotes hidden. The ll is going to show us the long listing on those files, and pwd will show us our present working directory. And that's the same in Linux if you do the pwd. So there we go. Now let's go back over and let's get back to our directory operation. So over here in Windows now, we're going to create a directory. We're going to first change directories, and then we're going to create a directory, and then we'll remove that directory. So CD stands for change directories. We'll go C:\/ like this. And now we're at C:\/ Now if I do a CD dash inside of Linux and Unix, that'll take you back to your last working directory. Now inside of Windows, it won't do that. If I type CD enter, then it will just tell you where you're at inside of Windows. So these are some distinctions that you might want to watch out for. If I do want to get back to that directory, I can do a CD C:\/ documents and settings / administrator, and now I'm back over in this directory. So that CD tilde does not work in Windows, so we've got that there. Now, on Windows 10, the new, which they're constantly updating, Windows 10, you have the LS feature. You also have a number of new CD features, and so those are some things that you can do inside of Windows. So that's why it's really good to know several operating systems like Unix and Linux, and then go over to Windows and see when Windows adopts those features. So Windows will be adopting those features as time goes on. They have proven that they have adopted almost all of the Unix commands as time has gone on. It takes them about 30 years, but it happens. So we have that. Now let's go ahead, and I'm going to go. Something you should know is you type CD C:, like this, and that just takes you to the C drive. So that's a little different in Unix and Linux, is your drives are in mount points, so they're in directories. On Windows, you would be like this over in a drive. Now I'm over in drive D, C:, like this. And if I want to actually go to a path, I do have to put a / in there and go to a path. Take a note of that. Okay, let's make a directory. So mkdir test, enter. Now that was really straightforward, and it works the same in every system. So let me go over and type dir. We can see that test is there. I can cd into test, enter, dir, and you can see there's nothing inside of test. Well, there's dot and dot dot. Dot means the directory that you're in, and dot dot means one directory up. So that's all there is there. So let's go ahead and do a cd dot dot and go up one directory. And so now we're up one directory, and let's go back in the test. So cd to test, enter, cd dot dot, back up one directory. So there you go. Pretty nice. Now let's go ahead and remove that directory, and we're going to do an rmdir test. When we do that and type dir, you'll notice that directory is gone. Let's go ahead and pop over to Linux and do the same thing. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going through and changing directories, making a directory, and deleting a directory. So here, we're going to cd, and we're going to go to root, which is /. So now over root, here we are. Now the tree command is not installed by default. So if you type that, it'll say, sorry, can't do it. But you can do a sudo apt-get install -y tree and install it. And what it'll do is reach out to the internet, and it will download the tree utility. Now the Linux tree is a little different than the Windows tree, but they're very similar. And which I guess it started out in Unix, the tree command. But we'll go tree right here and do a -d, meaning we only want to see directories. And I'll hit Control-C to cancel that. Lots of directories. It's going to go on for a long time. Now that we're over here in root, we're going to see permissions issues. So we're going to type make directory test. And it says, I'm sorry, you can't create a directory test because you don't have permissions to do that. You're a user object. So on the Linux system, to become root, we type sudo, or to become a super user, we type sudo -s, and that does super user do shell. So now we became a root user. Or if you type who am I, you're still student as far as the person you are in the system. But you'll notice that who am I now sees you as root inside the shell. So let's go ahead and make a directory, and we'll call it test. Enter. Do an LL. Look at this. Now you can see the test directory is right there. Let's cd into test. Now that we're in test, LL, we'll look at the contents. Notice there's nothing there. cd ... back up one directory, and then we're going to get rid of the directory test, and we're going to type rm-rf test. Now what that does is remove recursively and force the directory test. And so that gets rid of our test directory. Now last, on the Unix box over here, we're actually using a very strange shell right now, which will install bash in the next set. But right now we're going to go ahead and do a cd to slash. Now we're going to do an LL. You can see that we're now in the root directory. We're going to make a directory and call it test directory. Oops. LL. And you can see that test is over on the screen somewhere. There it is. It's at the very top where the capital T. It's sorting by case. So you'll see that very top capital T. And you can do that different ways. You can do ls-g. We can look at that to get some color in there, and GH, and L, and there are a bunch of options with doing this on how you sort these things out and what options you do. But right now we're just going to do an LL, and you can see test is at the top underneath copyright. Now we can go into test, so cd into test, directory, ls, LL, nothing there. And if we do an ls-a, then you can see we have dot and dot dot, or ll-a, and you can see we have the dot and dot dot. The A means all, or show the hidden files as well. So now I'm going to do a cd dot dot and pop back up, and we'll do the same thing, rm-rf test. Enter. Now once we do that, type LL, and you'll notice that test is now gone. So there you go. There are the first few commands on 3 different operating systems, and now we're going to move on to actually creating some users. Now when we create the users, we are going to be deleting the users too, so, so they're not going to stay there. You don't have to worry about that. But over here in WinWeb, we're going back over to Windows, and now we're going to add some users. Now the way we do that is net user/add. Whatever username you want. In this case, we'll make it student. You can put comments on there and say this is a student user. I think it's capital C. Oops. I think it's /C. Oops. And we need password. In Windows, you just type the password in clear text after the student name. And then you choose active : yes, and we can activate that. Now this student user doesn't understand that, because I'm wondering how I do my comment. I think it's /comment : yeah, there we go. So /comment : there. So net user /add student password /comment : student user active yes. Now we've done that, we can type net user. We can look at the users on the system. And we can do a net user student, and you can look at the student so you can see all the stats on the student. Okay, now we want to add it to a group, so we do net local group /add student administrators. Oops. There. Net local group add. To what are you adding it? Administrators. Who are you adding? Student. And so you need to put student after administrators there. So net local group add administrators student. So we add that. Now let's go over and type net user student. And you can see that we now have a student user. And if you see at the very bottom, they're now part of the local group membership administrators. So there you go. Now, deleting the user is pretty much just as easy as creating it. So we'll do a net user, net user / delete student. So go through like that. Now, if we do a directory, // documents and settings, we can see if the student user directory is there, and it is not. Okay, let's go on over to Linux. Now, in Linux, we won't be creating the user student because that already exists. So if we want to go ll/home, you can see the student directory already exists. So we'll just do a user add -m. That means add a directory, and we can specify the shell or other things, but right now we're going to leave that blank. -c, this is the comment. We'll say demo user. -g, we can add to sudoers like that. Or let's do the group. Now let's go ahead and do it now. Sudo like that, and then you're going to type demo for the username and press enter. Now if we look over here, ll and home, then you can see that there's now a demo account. Or the net user kind of command, we can type a cat etc password. Now that's passwd. When you type the cat etc passwd, it gives you a listing of all the users on the system. That last user we just created is the demo user right there. So having created that demo user, we now need to give a password to demo user. So we type passwd demo, and it'll ask us for a password. And I'm just going to type something there really fast. Okay, now we've got that. Now we're going to eliminate that user. So we'll go through and do a user delete -r demo. And it deleted the user. Now I go over here and it says the user didn't have any mail, so it couldn't find anything in the user's mailbox, so it did not delete that. If we look over in home again, the -r deletes the home directory. Okay, let's pop on over to Unix. And over in the Unix box, we're going to do the user add. And we'll try to go ahead and type the same convention. So we're going to do that, do a C, demo user, and we'll type demo as the user. And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. So on the Unix box, you're actually going to use the command add user. So on add user, you can just run through and it says username, demo, full name, demo user, and UUID, we're going to leave that. Login group demo, that's fine. Demo other groups, we can, this is where we can do sudo. Login class default, shell, we can use whatever shell we want there. The home directory, home demo, permissions, default, password based authentication, yes, empty password, no, use a random password, no, enter a password, enter the password again. Lock out the account after creation, no, and it says, do you want to do all this? And we can say, oh my goodness, yes. Now, you can actually do this all in one line. You don't have to walk through that. So you don't have to go through that entire process. You don't have to go through the entire add user process just like that. You can do it through a batch command or non-interactively. Now, to get rid of the user, I guess before we delete it, there is a pw user command. So we need pw user help, and you can go through and do a pw user add, and we can do that entire thing. You can go through and set up the demo user or whatever and do it that way. So if you want to look at those commands, there are man pages for that. You do pw on the man pages. Q to get out of the man pages, just press the letter Q. Or you type man add user, you can look at that. Scroll down with, page down, or you hit arrow down. And Q to get out of it. But one thing that's important to note is on a Unix or a Linux box, you can actually just go in and edit the file, etc password, and you can add the user right here. So you can add the user. You just have 3 places that you got to add it. You got to add it in etc password. You've got to edit. Here, let me just do it this way. You've got to do it in etc password. You've got to do it in etc group. And you've got to do it on etc shadow. The etc shadow is going to be automatic because when you go through and on Unix boxes they're not using the etc shadow. On the Linux box, when you use the etc shadow, it's going to be automatic when you do the pass WD, the user account. All right, let's get rid of that user. So we're going to go through and rm the user. That rm user, we'll put -- help here, see if there's any option we should be aware of. And this is one of the things that you look at. For instance, ll/home, you can see we have a demo user directory. Well, let's type rm user demo like this. And it says, are you sure you want to get rid of this user? We're going to say yes. And it's going to ask you, remove the user's home directory. Yes. Done. Now ll, back over to home, and you notice that user is gone. So if we go back over and we look at the tail group and tail password, demo is gone. So there is no more demo on that system. There you go. Now the rest of the commands in the system, the rest of the commands, we're going to be going through and looking at those commands based on the system and kind of how they're used inside the system, where we look at files, we create files, etc., when we need to do that. So we're not going to be going through and actually just throwing out random commands. We're going to have application for the further commands. But I did want to give you a foundation right now so that you can see how these systems all do the same thing. You can create users in all these systems. You can modify users in all the systems. We can have home directories in the systems, directories. We can create directories. We can see where we are. All of that stuff is the same on all the operating systems. Just a little different command, that's all. So Unix had a little different command than Linux, and Linux had a little different command than Windows. In the future, though, you'll be applying these and you'll see them in the lab, just the commands you type. So don't get stressed out that, oh my goodness, I didn't study the command, or we have not used that command by itself without any real purpose. That's where we're learning the commands. We'll learn the commands actually doing inside of the future labs. Now for the quiz this week, it's actually just a lab grade. But since I'm not there today, I just made it a quiz. So there you go. For the lab grade, you have to create the Windows, Unix, and Linux machines to the specifications that I put in the lab. So that's just the, the 4 gig of RAM, the 1 CPU, the 48 gig disk. So just go do that. Take a screenshot of the command I leave for you. I leave you a little command there so that you can run that command on your if you're running Windows, Mac, or Linux. Just run that command. It should give you the details of your machines, or click on the machines individually and go through and make a screenshot so I can see that you did the machine the right way. Now, I guess I should show you. The way that works is you'll need to be on your host machine, not inside of a virtual machine. So you don't need to be inside of one of these machines when you run this command. You need to actually open up your host machine here, and you need to run it inside your host machine. When you get into this machine, you'll type a couple of commands, and those commands will show that you've got the 4 gig and number of CPUs, etc. Now, giving the actual disk size is a little more difficult, so just please go through and verify inside of VirtualBox, VMware VirtualBox, that you did set the hard drive. It'll say right here, storage, IDE, primary master. Just make sure that you got those things at 48 gig, just like that. I won't be requiring a screenshot of those today because we're not in the lab together, and it's just a little bit of a problem. So there you go. But you will run those commands. Don't worry, this command right here, it is in the lab, the quiz. I guess we're calling it a quiz now. It's in the quiz, so please just run those commands, and just on the screen, once you do it, do a print screen, go over and copy that part right there, and that will give us, let me see the screenshot there. That'll give you a screenshot and upload that screenshot, and that's all there is to it. Hope that this has been helpful. Hope that you learned kind of how different operating systems can do the same things, like create user accounts and create directories and change directories, etc. Look forward to talking to you next week, and I hope everything's well.